ebbed somewhat in recent years because of difficulty in the economy. The murder rate is coming back up. So I think that there are some things that we can do to help law enforcement, help prosecutions beyond the death penalty.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I think I have a long-standing record as someone who would support the reinstatement of the death penalty. Not that I believe that it's a deterrent, and I don't think it's provable to be a deterrent, not a deterrent one way or the other. But yes, I would support a very carefully crafted death penalty bill because, quite frankly, I think it is the appropriate punishment for certain crimes. But I have to come back to something my opponent said earlier. He talked about noise barriers in Linfield, and we're actually on the verge of making those a reality because of the efforts of my office working with Senator Richard Tassay. And interestingly enough, my opponent also talked about the I-93, I-95 interchange in Reading, which was a huge issue in 2002. And in fact, we were able to get a hearing in Reading because of my efforts with Senator Tassay. We were able to get that process back to square one because of the efforts of Senator Tassay and myself. And I'm interested that my opponent has said he's a homeowner in Reading and he's lived there for, I guess, a couple of years, but never found the time or energy to get to any of those public meetings, at least according to the public sign-in sheets, and to now have this newfound interest, given that he's lived in the southwest corner of Reading.
Please stick with the question at hand. We can move on to the next question, Mr. Jones. You will go first.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about the state MCAS test? Should passing the MCAS test in the 10th grade be the sole determining factor in whether or not a student receives a diploma from high school?
I support the MCAS. I have always supported the MCAS system. I think that is an important means for actually helping the taxpayers, quite frankly, evaluate that they're getting their bang for their buck. And most people that pay taxes don't necessarily have kids in schools, whether it's at the local level or people who pay income taxes. And I think it's an important component for us to measure how our schools are doing, and importantly, how our students are doing. That being said, we also have to provide the resources to help those students who are not achieving or not succeeding. One of the problems we've had with MCAS remediation monies is that they've always been stilted on socioeconomic basis. My concern, or my belief, is that if you're a student who's failing MCAS in any community, we should be trying to give you the additional resources. Heretofore, those resources have been focused on students in, let's say, an urban area where maybe there's a higher percentage of failing. Well, it seems to me if you're a failing student, and we as a society want to show that we care about all students, we should be making a concerted effort across the board to provide the resources for you if you're failing, and try to get you from failing to the needs improvement, to the passing, to the proficient category. We're very fortunate in the 4 towns I represent that we have had tremendous success on the MCAS because we really do have some of the best educational public school systems in my district.
Mr. Tafoya.
I think that our primary concern for our high school students is to make sure that they can pass the MCAS test so that they can receive a diploma after the hard work that they've put in. We do have excellent schools across our 4 towns. The performance has been better each year in terms of the results with the MCAS test. But education is not just about testing for failure, it's about teaching for success. And we need to make sure that our students have all the right kinds of tools to succeed in the future. Should the MCAS test be a criterion for graduation? Yes, it should be one. Obviously, grades, attendance, and there are other factors that come into play for getting a diploma. I do think, however, that there are categories of students who need special consideration in this area. There was a proposal for a local option to exempt special education students from MCAS tests. My opponent voted against granting that local option to school districts. I would support that kind of measure. Again, we've suffered cutbacks in many areas in education over the last few years, and the remediation monies for MCAS tutoring is one area. I firmly think that we need to do more to help our towns deal with this particular issue. The problem with testing, however, goes past MCAS to also the requirements that are imposed on us from the federal government by No Child Left Behind. We need to make sure that our communities aren't suffering at the hands of these kinds of mandates. There are a few schools anyway in our 4 towns that are being watched now because of No Child Left Behind. I think that's particularly unfair knowing the quality of these schools. And again, we need to make sure that education is based on teaching our children in a way that they'll be able to succeed in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Tafoya, the next question is, are you in favor of casino gambling in Massachusetts?
Casino gambling comes up because people are interested in finding easy ways to raise state revenues. But if you take a look at the hard numbers, actually casino gambling is a rather inefficient means to generate revenue for the state. After you take out the social costs associated with an increase in gambling, you take out the public-related costs for increased law enforcement, for the regulatory agency that's going to have to supervise casino gambling, for the other costs associated with traffic and such from locating a casino in a community, it's really highly doubtful that the state is going to see much benefit from casinos. I know that politicians in Massachusetts have looked with envy on the experience in Connecticut, but there's also some other experiences that we should look at. A community like Atlantic City, New Jersey has seen no real positive economic development efforts from having casinos for these last couple of decades. And I would really not like to see something like that happen to Massachusetts communities in need. I think there are better ways that we can go about doing economic development, and I'm not currently in favor of allowing casino gambling in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Peggy. I actually would favor looking at a proposal. I think you need to do some sort of a destination resort, so not on the model of Atlantic City, but on the model of Connecticut. If anybody here has gone down to Connecticut or drives even in the city of Boston, there's a reason Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun have huge billboards and spend millions and millions and millions of dollars advertising to citizens of Massachusetts, because those people drive down, spend their money, enjoy the facilities down there, and then come back. So we in fact pay the social cost, but derive none of the benefit that we could potentially derive. I think if we did it the right way, and I think the right way would mean oversight, the host community or communities would need to have a local referendum. The host community or communities would need to be given an extra stipend, if you want, for hosting a facility. There need to be an infrastructure, a percentage of the take, if you will, would need to be directed towards compulsive gambling and other avenues that are affiliated, whether it's law enforcement or some of those concerns. But I think the biggest portion that comes back should be funneled through, let's say, the lottery formula back to our cities and towns. And I think unquestionably that would lead to hundreds of millions of dollars of additional assistance back to our cities and towns that I think we could use to benefit our educational systems, our public safety systems. You know, it's interesting, I've served on a couple of these commissions and looked at this issue, and I hear people say, well, we're going to have a lot of traffic because of this. Well, you have traffic when you have places where there are a lot of people. You know, the Red Sox are going to be playing a baseball game tonight, and we all certainly hope they win. There's going to be a lot of traffic around there, but certainly nobody's saying we shouldn't have a Red Sox game tonight because there's going to be a lot of traffic. We had a wonderful development, we mentioned it earlier, at Walker's Brook Drive in the town of Reading. Well, you know what? It added some traffic. I think that that's a side effect of when you have economic development and you have places where a lot of people go. A lot of people go down to Patriots games. There's a lot of traffic. I don't think anybody suggests that, well, we shouldn't have sports venues and venues such as that. So I think that we can learn from the negative experience of Atlantic City and the positive experiences of Connecticut. And I think Massachusetts has the credibility and the ability and the experience and the know-how to do it right.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, go first. This question is about health insurance. In general, what is your proposal to help citizens deal with the rising health insurance costs? And in particular, what is your opinion about a single-payer system for health care coverage for all Massachusetts residents? If you favor it, how would you propose funding it?
Well, at the present point, I don't favor a single-payer system because I haven't seen one that allows people to retain the choices that I think they need and deserve in making their decisions for health care. But I did support the recent proposed constitutional amendment, which would say health care would be a right to people in Massachusetts. It was actually amended so that whatever proposal we came up with would have to go back to the voters, and we could have a full and thorough debate on whether the people liked the idea that the legislature came up with. I think that was, and I did that for two reasons. One is because I think the people should have a full understanding of the impacts, the costs, the benefits, and perhaps the negative consequences of whatever we propose. And because I thought without having that language in there about coming back to the voters for whatever we proposed, we would be relying on potentially the justices of the Supreme Court to write a plan that may not be anything like what the legislature ever envisioned or anything like what the citizenry might be willing to support. And I thought that was a bad precedent. But I think there are a number of things we can do on health insurance to work towards costs. I think we can do some modest tort reform in Massachusetts, and there is a bill pending. I'm not certain that it'll go anywhere this session. Actually, I'm quite confident that it won't. But I think tort reform would have some beneficial impacts. I think streamlining and standardizing paperwork between providers, insurers, hospitals, and other interested and concerned parties would have a salutary impact in freeing up millions and millions of dollars with the system. Another issue that I've been working on to try to free up dollars is the issue of medical waste. If you have a loved one in a nursing home and they have a prescription and the doctor has to change that prescription, quite often what happens with the unused portion of the medication is it's flushed down the toilet. So we end up with a lot of happy fish in Boston Harbor. But it's not the way we should address, quite frankly, good pharmaceutical products. We should find a way to reuse those, to provide those drugs to people that need them, whether they're in our facilities or other people that are of limited means. Another thing we need to do is we need to continue on the path of prescription advantage in Massachusetts. Time's up.
Thank you. Mr. Tafoya.
The healthcare crisis that we face in Massachusetts is one of the most important issues that we have to discuss this year. All of our families have seen rising costs for health insurance coverage, for our prescription drugs, and for our taxes as a result of the large number of uninsured that we try to take care of here in the state. The best way to drive down costs are twofold. One is we need to make sure that everybody in Massachusetts has access to quality and affordable health care insurance. The number of uninsured is driving up expenses for all of us in this state. In terms of a single payer plan, I think that that would be the best route that we can take for the long term here in Massachusetts. The single payer is about how healthcare is financed. It's not how we dictate choices to people. It can be structured so that there are plenty of choices for people, similar to the kinds of experiences that we have today. And I think that that would be a humane and efficient way of proceeding. In terms of how we would pay for this kind of thing, we're already paying for it today. People pay an exorbitant amount of money. You may not see it in your paycheck every day, but it's costing you money because it's less money that your employer has to pay to you. I've worked in firms and seen health insurance bills. I've seen every year this mad scramble that employers have to do to try to hold down healthcare costs from their insurers. In terms of prescription drugs, we need to take action today to use the state's power to drive down prescription drug costs for our seniors. I am an unambiguous supporter of the Prescription Advantage program here in Massachusetts. My opponent voted against it in a resolution earlier this year, and he single-handedly blocked an attempt to extend the enrollment period last year during a critical period. I would not have taken those actions. I think we can do bulk purchasing. I think we can facilitate purchase of drugs from Canada and the UK and other sources to help folks.
Thank you. We will move, this will be the last question. And I'm going to pick one that's a nice summary question. What will your top, and this we start with Mr. Tafoya. What will be your top goals for the next 2 years if you are elected?
The top goals are these issues that I've been talking about here tonight. Number one is doing more to have the state help our cities and towns in terms of education funding. We've heard about the cutbacks in education funding. My opponent looks back to 2001, but if you take a look at the costs or the state aid sheets from 2002, 2003, you'll see the drop-offs. That information is publicly available on the governor's website. I'd be happy to share it with you if you send me an email from my website, tafoya2004.com. Education funding. Working on that to make sure that the state does the proper job to support the education reforms that we put in place here in Massachusetts 10 years ago, and to help stem the tide of rising property taxes that have afflicted our communities. And second, the issue that we just discussed, healthcare. We need to take measures today to help stem this crisis with the growing number of people who are uninsured here in the Commonwealth. We need to help folks who are facing very high prescription drug costs. I met a woman the other day in walking around the town who has a